welcome to the Culture Ward, where we dissect and dismember pop culture in all its forms. My name is Jess, and today we're talking about Daredevil, Born Again by Marvel Studios. Season 1, Episodes 1 and 2 aired on Disney Plus this past week. In this video, I will be doing a short, spoiler-free review with my thoughts on the show so far. We will have a more in-depth breakdown with heavy spoilers in a separate video, so click that notification bell to get an update when it's live. So, Daredevil Born Again has some very big shoes to fill, as we all know. I've said before that I believe the original Netflix show is one of the greatest television shows ever made, a hill I'll die on, and I don't think I'm alone in that assessment. Right out of the gate then, Disney has its work cut out just trying to compete with everyone's expectations. We know at one time that Disney intended to do a complete reboot with this series, ignoring the continuity of the original. Thankfully, common sense prevailed, and they decided to scrap that idea and make the new show a de facto continuation of the Netflix series, albeit with some fundamental changes. After watching the first 2 episodes, I can honestly say that they almost nailed it. I mean, it's good, better than I feared anyway, and by far the best thing Marvel has ever made for Disney Plus. I realize that's a pretty low bar, but it is what it is. It seems the majority of fans and critics also thought it was a good start for the new show, with some obvious caveats that we'll get into later. But it was always going to be compared, not to previous Disney Plus shows, but to the Netflix series, which I don't think is really fair. So this show is never going to be as good as the original, because not many shows can be. We should therefore be judging the series on its own merits, but quite a few cynics seem determined to hate it. Now, partly because of and partly in spite of its connection to the original series. And I get it, Disney Marvel hasn't done much to ingratiate itself to fans over the past few years, and they have burned a lot of bridges in goodwill. But we can encourage companies like Disney to do better with positive reinforcement as well as negative feedback. Look, when they put out a shitty product, call them out. Boycott, cancel your subscription, those are valid reactions. However, when they do put in the effort to deliver fan service, when they listen to criticism and try to course correct, we should reward that behavior. You know, let them know to do more of this, and who knows, maybe they will. Anyway, the show is set several years after the end of the Netflix series, and apparently everything that came after is still considered canon. More on that later. Right away, the opening title sequence is great. It's obviously taken inspiration from the Netflix opening. While not quite as good as that one, it's good. It's really good. Also, they used the original theme music, which was a great idea. It orients us to the fact that this is the same universe. I really like the cinematography and set design. It feels different from the original show, but somehow still familiar. It feels like these characters belong in this world. We do see the return of several main characters, Karen, Foggy, Fisk, Vanessa, spoilers ahead, but we introduce some new ones as well, like Kirsten McDuffie, Heather Glenn, and Bebe Urich, that's Ben Urich's niece. None of them are totally out of place or unpleasant yet, but I'm not sure they add much to the story either. At this time, they're just neutral additions. One of the valid criticisms of the show is how it handles its legacy characters, as well as how it introduces new ones. They rely heavily on the assumption that everyone will be well aware of the Netflix show. And the character development for legacy characters is therefore practically non-existent, and that does have some consequences early on, some of which I'll discuss shortly after the spoiler warning. They probably should have stretched out the first 2 episodes to give the characters a chance to breathe and establish themselves in this show. As for new characters, they try to introduce them almost entirely through their respective relationships with our legacy characters, which again relies on the audience to know our legacy characters in advance. In other words, we have to accept these new characters based on value judgments of the old characters. For instance, with new character Kirsten, we know that Foggy seemed comfortable with her, and we see that Matt likes her. So we are expected to like her or accept her based on that. She doesn't really get any time to grow on the audience on her own merits. If we don't know our old characters' values, we can't really form an opinion of these new people without more backstory. Now look, it's only 2 episodes so far. Maybe they'll suss these people out better going forward. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But it is a valid criticism that this new show wants to rely so heavily on the established lore and character building of the Netflix show, while at the same time wanting to distance itself pretty rapidly. It's kind of like wanting your cake and eating it too, I guess. I'm glad they're at least acknowledging the Netflix show, but they still need to orient the characters in this story before going forward. As for the tone, it is guardedly somber, and there is anxiety bubbling under the surface, but it doesn't feel quite as gritty and dark as the original, at least yet. It still has gravity, and it works with the source material, so it's fine. There were a couple of well-choreographed fight scenes in the first 2 episodes, and they were well done. Not quite as good as the original, but that's going to be a theme throughout this review. Nothing is as good as the original. Admittedly, it did get a little dull at times. As we try to orient the audience to the characters' positions 7 years after we last saw them all together, there was a lot of backstory to fill in, including reminding us about things that have taken place in the MCU between Endgame and now, including a few unfortunate references to Disney Plus shows like Hawkeye and Echo, maybe even She-Hulk. I cringed a little every time they brought up events that took place in prior projects, but I have to forgive them a little canonization. And I think they did it as painlessly as possible. Like, there does seem to be at least a little self-awareness. The dialogue was decent, the few scenes that worked quite well. There are a couple of subplots running through the show, although I'm not sure how I feel about all of them. I, again, am willing to grant some leeway. I don't have to love every detail. I mean, there were times in the original show that I rolled my eyes, and I absolutely loved that show. The pacing's pretty good. While the substance was occasionally dull, the pacing didn't really contribute to that. It moves on at a good clip with thoughtful interludes to accentuate character moments, such as the diner scene with Matt and Wilson Fisk that we see in the trailer. The most obvious point of praise are the performances by the cast, especially Cox and D'Onofrio. They both fit their characters perfectly, and they bring them to life and sell their story to the audience. Bottom line, I like it. Not a perfect show so far, but a worthy addition to the Daredevil franchise. Now I just have to hope they stick the landing. We have been hurt before. But if they keep the same pace, style, and reverence for the characters, I think I may get my wish of a solid 7 out of 10 show. Maybe they'll surprise me with even better content going forward. I'm going to keep my expectations tempered for now, though. So, Daredevil, Born Again, episodes 1 and 2. So far, I'll give it a rank of, yay, they didn't ruin it. What about you? What did you think of Daredevil, Born Again? Good, bad, indifferent? Let me know in the comments below. As always, like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Bye for now. We hope to see you next time in the Culture Wars.